Welcome to The Teacher's Story. I'm Jackie Scully. This is a podcast to elevate teacher voice. In this program, you will hear teachers sharing their journey into this profession and their ideas for education. I'm kicking it off Teacher Appreciation Week, which starts May 2nd. This is about honest, vulnerable, inspiring storytelling. It's a time and a space for teachers to share their ideas for the future of education. Teachers are beautiful beings who give their heart and soul to their community. They're innovators, they're inspirational, not only to children, but to the people around them. And they deserve to share their voice. So welcome to The Teacher's Story. Enjoy. Hi, welcome to The Teacher's Story. Today we have Raheen Fatima with us from Pakistan, and she is a young activist. She's also an entrepreneur. She's a stand-up comedian, an educator, and she also has her own podcast. She interviews people from all over the world, and she's very inspirational because she has taken education into her own hands. So we're going to learn a lot about her experience, not only as a student and choosing her educational experience, but also how she is interviewing people and educating people throughout the world with her activism. So thank you, Raheen, for being with us today.
It's a pleasure being on. Thank you so much for having me, Jackie. And it is always very wonderful to share my experience because I can see how people can get inspired by it in different ways, and not just people my age, but people like you that are educators and teachers out there. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on today. And I hope to have a wonderful chat.
I'm sure we will. Thank you so much. Generation Z is something very important for me. I teach this generation. I always see these young adults as the leaders in our society and the activists who really care about the planet and the future of our world and society. And so I really like to foster those relationships. So I'm so glad we connected. My first question for you is, what was your inspiration to look at a different type of educational experience and maybe how that inspired you to the work you're doing today as an activist?
Yeah, well, thank you. So basically, I have been going to like normal school here in Pakistan since, well, I started school. And so um, I never actually felt the need until halfway through seventh grade because it was going really good. Like I was one of those children that was like, going all right in the normal schooling system here. And so right when the pandemic came, it's like everything shut off, and for a month there was no communication from the school side. And then, we see that, there's, oh, so we're going online and we're going to be doing it on I think at first we started with Google Classroom, then we hopped onto a bunch of different platforms. And all of that, for me, although I was a very good student in class, I realized that maybe I was not such a good learner because I wasn't able to learn through that whole thing. And I didn't exactly, blame myself for it, but I saw that, okay, the teachers weren't trained in that way. And there was just a lot of uncertainty because some teachers were like, okay, maybe we go, in person next week. And all of us, deep down, we knew that that's not going to happen. And I think just in that time, because I think I was fairly good at math and English was all right, but sciences is something that I've never been a fan of, like STEM in general, more the science and tech part of it. And then the online part just made it worse. And so I saw my grades drop. And then I was like, that's because I didn't learn anything new. I wasn't able to understand the concepts. And that's also around the time because when COVID hit was the time that I started interviewing people. And so I used to interview all sorts of people, all types of people. And I realized that there's so much more to the world than, the school that I go to. And so I started looking into different people that were talking of how education is more than school, how learning is more than grades. And I started looking into that. Then I did halfway through my eighth grade, and that's when I decided to drop out. Although all my friends and my teachers, and I mean, I really respect that and I love them just because they were so concerned. Like, this is the sort of time you're almost into high school. Do you really want to like do this right now? And I was like, yeah. And my mom and dad were like totally with me. totally on board. Like my dad was like, even if you don't want to go after like conventional, schooling, I'm fine with it. Do what you want. And so I started interviewing educators after that, disrupt educators, people that had different schools and there were different programs. And, the main challenge for me was getting a scholarship because I didn't afford many of these, private online American, schools. And or going through a bunch of different schools and a bunch of different interviews with educators, I came across this school that is the Socratic Experience, and I saw that's founded by Michael Strong. And I already had Michael, I'd been seeing some of his work because I had him in my LinkedIn connections and stuff. And so I asked him for an interview and I interviewed him. And at the end, I was like, I'd really love to join, but he was like, we don't give out scholarships. But then he later reached out to me and he decided to give me 100% scholarship, like a full scholarship for the 4 years of my high school. And I was like, that was like a very big thing for me because the Socratic Experience basically focuses on learning through the Socratic method of dialogue. And so we have two basically classes, like one humanities and one STEM, and then you could have a bunch of electives and you can add on subjects. And I think the reason why I love this is because it's not just right for me, but it's right for most people. Because I'm not gonna like risk and say everyone, but like for most people, because you can choose. Like I have fellow learners that aren't doing math or that aren't doing humanities, or they have different interests, so they're picking that specific class or that specific elective or adding on different subjects through TSE. So you basically get to choose what you're learning based on what you want to do. And if you do not know what you want to do, of course, there's with every learner, there's a mentor. My mentor is Michael Strong. And you can have different mentors. So they basically, help you figure out what you want to do. And it's, again, even if by senior year you do not know what you want to do, that's totally all right, because it takes time to realize what you want to do in life. So yeah, I think I really love it. I'm in my sophomore year right now. I just got back from break, so it's still like getting used to it again after Christmas break. But it's going really good, and I'm really glad that I did take it in my own hands and I decided to make the switch.
I just think this is such a great story, such an inspiration for younger, like other young adults, but even for me as an educator to hear this story, that you decided to do something really bold. You saw a system that wasn't working for you. You fortunately had parents who supported you. I don't think, everyone would be in that situation. So kudos to your parents. That's amazing. They saw you as maybe someone who's very independent, very intuitive, critical thinker, like what you need, that there's sources out there. So you took it upon yourself to look for experts, to go on LinkedIn, to make these connections as a young adult. I mean, that's amazing. There's still many people my own age that really don't see how powerful LinkedIn is. It's such a powerful platform and community, and you can meet incredible people and then network and find, these new opportunities. So the fact that you connect it right to like the founder and was able to get a scholarship, and then now he's your mentor. And I talk about this a lot on this show about one thing I really want to see more in education in all types of schooling is student choice. I think when you are given, even at a young age, the choice of classes you want to take, of course, there's certain areas that are foundational. But when even you get to the secondary level, like you said, after 8th grade, you should be making choices into what you are curious about, what you want to dive into, because ultimately that's going to lead you into a passion. What do you want to do as a career? Or maybe what do you want to create in the world? It doesn't even have to be necessarily like, this is my career path, but like, this is something I want to dive into as a project. So this Socratic Experience School, I recently actually just followed them on LinkedIn as well, and they definitely look like an amazing institution. And I saw a post recently about how a lot of teachers have been reaching out to them to see if there were job opportunities. Because I think even teachers, because there's many in America, I'm sure in other places around the world, are looking to leave the classroom because maybe they're not fulfilled with the traditional type of schooling. I think just as students, they feel kind of burnt out and kind of like, this is frustrating. It's not really the way we should be going in the 21st century. We need something more innovative. We want to give students more opportunities and choice. So I'm so glad that you found this opportunity and you can share that with all of us and hopefully inspire us to do better. So kind of leading into my next part is, what were some of your early experiences? Either you could talk about at, in more detail about the school, the Socratic experience, but how this has also continued your work with interviewing people from all different backgrounds all over the world. So if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I do. So basically, I think one of the things that I love about the Socratic experience is that I'm able to incorporate what I do, my passions into my projects. And I think every project that I've ever done at TSE has been like so me. It's been like all about me, and it's a reflection of, I think, who I am. And one of my projects was actually my TEDx talk. And so I have always wanted to do a TEDx, because so my dad was an avid TEDx, or TED Talk watcher. And whenever I would have like, a debate competition, speech, whatever, like anything at school, I would go to TED for inspiration. And so I once actually got the opportunity to attend a TEDx at this university. And I remember being in the audience and everyone was like, who is this 10-year-old? Because, there's all of these older people, and then there's this 10-year-old that's just like an energy ball in the middle of the room. And so I watched all the speakers and I met all of them, and I was like, oh my God, I want to be here. And so when there was the break in the middle, I went up on the stage so you could actually go and take pictures there. And so I went and actually took a picture there. And I was, the next time I want to go to a TEDx, it has to be my own TEDx. And I want to come and speak here. And so that was at the end of 2018. And by the end of 2021, I actually was at my own TEDx, and it was like really unbelievable. And so my mentor again, Michael, helped me with like writing it and sort of, just knowing what I would want to say, what I would want to share. And when I did it, it was actually one of my projects when we were talking about, I think we were talking about, we were talking about exploration and experimentation. It was really related to my TEDx. So I think that was around when I joined TSC. So I think it was a really cool experience that I got to experience something that's been like a lifelong dream. And also having it as a graded project. And of course I got an A for it, like no questions asked. So yeah, I think that was like really fun. But I think also like talking about earlier experiences, I always look back at the time that I used to jump, like actually have like actual like physical school, and then I also used to have work. So sometimes my days would look like school in the morning, and then from there I would go straight to the incubation center because I worked for a business there, and I would be picked up usually evening or nighttime by my dad from there, and I'd come home, do my homework, and go to sleep. And I look back at those days and I'm like, oh my God, I have become so lazy now. Like really lazy. I used to be so energetic and so on top of things. So yeah, I do miss those days. And I think it's a lot of hard work that I put in back then, now that I have so many great projects that I've done, so many great things that I've just achieved. And I look back at that and I'm like, that Raheen was one of a kind. And I think that with time passing, I think I've been very lucky to have so many great people around me. And I've had many opportunities to, actually avail and then have a chance to look back at it and be like, God, that was awesome. So yeah, I have been really blessed.
Wow, that's amazing. The way you're talking, you're so mature for your age, listening to you, you would think you're this like seasoned adult that's had, a whole lifetime of experience. So you're very wise beyond your years. And this experience of talking about a project at your school that led to you actually doing and presenting at a TEDx that's the type of learning we want to see, like this, like, getting out there in the real world, taking your voice or whatever you want to do and putting it out there, and you get a grade for it, but really the bigger part of it is that experience, and you're honing a skill of public speaking, of inspiring people, you know, and the fact that it started with you going years before you even came to this school. And it was just kind of like the seed that was planted. Like, I want to do that one day. And then you found the school that fostered that. That's what education should do. It should foster those seeds that were planted, or maybe that school teacher, mentor plants those seeds for you and then makes that come to life. And I find that to be the beautiful part of education, and why I wanted to go into it, you know, originally, is to inspire young people to plant those seeds and then actually see them do that kind of work in, you know, society. Do you find that the pandemic, besides finding the school and transitioning into a new kind of educational space, is a time that really has changed your life? Like, what are your takeaways from going through the pandemic?
I think because I really remember the day that I heard first coronavirus, and then like it went on to become way bigger than something that I think I had anticipated, because I knew like it's going to be a thing, but I didn't know it was going to be the thing for like the longest time. But I think it changed a lot, because I remember I had just gotten back from the theater tour that I did. So I went around 2 cities and we talked about child abuse and children's rights through puppet plays and theater plays. And so I just gotten back, and it was a weekend, and I hear everything's off. Coronavirus, you know, has just taken off. And so I was like, what now? And so I think for like the first 2, 3 weeks, because there was no school, so I like basically chilled. It was like the time of my life, because I was staying up late, and I, you know, because it's like my parents weren't even stopping me like staying up late. They were like staying up late with me. And then it just got seriouser from there, like seriouser, I know it's not a word, but like more serious from there. And then I actually, so I remember I had done 2 interviews before COVID hit, and that was just like a random thing one of my mentors had asked me to do. And I was like, well, sure. And it was, and the reason that I even did that was because I had so many friends on Facebook, and that was the time that I was only on Facebook, and I had so many friends on there. I'm like, I call them friends, but I don't even know them. And to have a strong network, you need to know your network. And so I was like, so now that I have this time, I should do something. And that was around the time where people in my community started going live on Facebook. And so one random day, I go like, let's go live on Facebook. And so I had a friend with me, and she does a bunch of different things, and that day we wanted to talk about nutrition, and so we basically went live, and we like, I think at the peak time we had like more than 200 people watching, which for my following at the time, which is like 6,000, was like really good. um and we were live for a long time, and I was like, I think I should start doing live interviews. And I did that. And I remember it was COVID. And then I also had like online classes at that point in time. And I was doing like 4 or 5 interviews a day. Because I remember the day I actually scheduled 6 interviews in a day. And you know why I did that is because I knew half of them would cancel last minute. Like half of them would not even show up. So it's just it was a very crazy time of my life. Like I am just thinking about it, and it's just like more stories come into my head. And it was really good. And I think that's also the time that I realized that I wanted an online school for myself, because only because the school was online was I able to do all these things. Because if it had been in person, I would have never gotten the chance or the time to even think about doing something like this. So yeah, I think it was a really good time in my life, and I grew a lot. Around, I think, almost a year we were like on lockdown, because I live in gated communities, so like they just close you off from the world. And I even moved in COVID, but it was, I think, a very good time in my life, and I learned a lot in that time, met a lot of different people that I still, you know, I have a very good connection with. So yeah, but I think that little COVID boredom turned into something so big at this point, because I've interviewed like a lot of people, like more than 500 people. And then I've done like countless sessions and panel discussions, and you know, off the record discussions, and so many interviews that I just look through my laptop and I go like, I've recorded so many of them. So there's so many that I've not even put on yet. So yeah, it's been a very fun ride.
Now, what inspired you to now before like Facebook Live with a friend, but where you're like, I just want to interview people. Like, where did that come from? You think like, I just want to interview like just people from all over and just like post it and get to know them. Like, where do you think that came from?
I think also from like getting to know my network, because I had so many people. It's like because my dad manages my social media with me. So he's like, so I knew some people and then he knew some people. And then there's some people we had no idea why we had on there. So it's just like a lot of different people. And so I think getting to know people, but also like if, I mean, we've met before. So it's like, you know how talkative I can get. And I just love talking to people. Like I love just the opportunity of like walking up to someone or just going to someone and be like, hey, my name is Raheen, this is what I do, what do you do, or like can I know more about you? Because I think it's just like I know so many random conversations that have turned into so many great things, like so many just like random people that reached out to me, shared what they do, and then I shared what I do, and then we collaborated and did wonderful things together. So I've always been a very talkative, outgoing person that wants to know what's going on in the world, what's going on with you, and then I want to share what's going on with me. And so I think again, it started out as that Facebook Live and then turned into people. Okay, so that's someone that I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of engagement on my posts from that person. Like they're commenting, they're sharing, they're liking, and they follow me and stuff. And then when I started interviewing those people, I actually went on this whole thing where I interviewed anything that I was fascinated by. And so like as a young person, like I have researched about the weirdest things, like the most bizarre things ever. Because like my interests change, I think, by the day. Because like one day I'm like, I want to be an astronaut. And the other I'm like, no, like Master Chef's my thing. And again, I now know what I want to be, but it's just like, you see a new thing and you want to do that. So, I remember I had this space and I'm like, maybe I could like, be an astronaut or something. And then I interviewed this person that was an astronaut from NASA. And
Wow.
yeah, so it's just like because I didn't even know I had her in my network for like the
Oh my
longest time.
gosh.
Then I just searched it up and I'm like, she's a NASA astronaut. Why am I not interviewing her? And so I interviewed her. And then this was the time that I was getting into like like fascination of AI, and I interviewed an AI robot. And then I remember I had this science homework that was about molecules, and I did not understand anything about molecules, and I hated everything to do with them. So turns out I had this person. She was a PhD in molecular sciences. And she was in my network. So I reached out with her and I'm like, hey, can I interview you? And I also have a question for my homework. She's like, sure. And
I
I
love it.
interviewed her. And then I was like, so here's the question for my homework. And again, like, I think most people would have just been like, that's stupid. Like, like she knows so much about like her field. And you would just ask her a homework question. I'm like, so what? Big deal. She knows so much about this thing. Why doesn't she explain it to me?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just that was the time that I've interviewed people that were like, selling on food carts. And then I've interviewed senators and celebrities and people that I grew up seeing on TV, because I remembered that I messaged this very big TV actor here in Pakistan, and he replied. He's like, "Yeah, sure, let's do an interview. I see that you do interviews." Like, oh my God. And then, there's others that I've, interviewed and done different projects with. So I think just I love talking to new people because it's just the mystery of it. Like you don't
Mm-hmm.
know what's gonna come from there. There's so many times that you guys have so many things in common, and there's so many times that so many great collaborations and projects can come out of it. And even if not that, a great relationship and a great connection can come out of it. If not something, so to say, like has to be a project or has to be, something you see, it can just be a good bond. So yeah.
Yeah, that's what comes to mind is that's very authentic. Like you have an authentic curiosity of getting to know people and just saying, hey, what the heck? Let me send a message. Let me go walk up to someone on the street. Let me go ask them about them. And when you ask someone about them and you're genuinely curious about them, people want to open up. Like, I think, especially from a young adult, to say like, I am just genuinely like curious to learn about people. And I also want to reach out to certain experts in the field because I'm interested in that field of study, or maybe I need help with this assignment. I think that's so bold. And just, this is, I don't know. It's like, you are taking life into your own hands and you are making it like the best that it could be. And by doing that, you are meeting incredible people throughout the world. And I love this. And I think LinkedIn is just a piece of it. Like, I'm finally just seeing that platform as that kind of, way of interacting. Like, hey, what the heck? I'm going to go, connect with this person and pick their brain a little bit, and then meet on like a virtual coffee chat and give them a, have a, connection there. I never did that before. I'm 40 years old and I'm just like starting to do this. Like, you're this young adult who's just like, I'm just going to go do it. And there's no fear. Like, it's like, why not? What do you have to lose? The worst case scenario, they don't respond to you, right? Or they say, I don't really have the time of day for you. And you're like, okay, moving on to the next person. And that is what living life is about. It's, taking risks, jumping through fears, being bold, being authentic, and just doing exactly what you want to do. And that's what you're doing. And I think that's incredible. In my last part, I always talk about like education reform. And I think you've really found this space that you see education flourishing at the Socratic experience. Anything else that comes to mind that you want to share about like how you could see education, progress into the future? Any ideas you have and how that could be transformative?
Yeah. I mean, for my school, we are very PBL centered. So we have like project-based learning. And like at first I'm like, project-based, like, but like how do I get grades? Like, how do they know my grades from the projects if they're not giving me tests? Like for me, coming from like a normal school, like it was just hard to like understand that perspective. And then when I did, I was like, dude, that's just great. Like if because one of my projects, I crocheted something and then I related crocheted with math and with coding, and how each crochet stitch is like code. And so I got a grade on it. And let's just say the grade was awesome. But getting to the point, it's just I feel like the way that we can start changing things up is by changing our practices that we carry on still in the education system. Because see, the schools like Socratic Experience or the Knowledge Society, there's so many great learning communities that we see online right now. But see, these are little things that we see. Because again, Jackie, if you go in our mutual connections, you would see, oh, so many different people. And then we're part of this very beautiful community on LinkedIn, right? But we need to start seeing change on, a public school level. And right from there is where change is going to begin. So I think we definitely need to start incorporating different things like project-based learning. And it has to be one of my favorite parts of my school, that we do projects together. I have a friend, I didn't even talk to him in class, but we made this board game together, and we have such a good friendship and such a good bond now, and we were able to learn so many different things. So I think definitely incorporating PBL into our learning is going to be the way forward. And that's just little things, very specific, I think, goal that I have.
Yeah. And I think school needs to be about a passion project. Like, what are you interested in? If you have a project, part of being a teacher, what you study in pedagogy is how to make assessments, which don't have to be tests, how to create rubrics, how to look at progress and score kind of where you are along the way and give feedback. I think giving meaningful feedback is more important than like a letter, like a grade letter. I mean, we all want that A, right? But when you have like meaningful feedback from your mentor or teacher about what you did well, what you can improve upon, and then go back to the drawing board, improve upon it, come back and get that feedback. It's all about that growing and learning process. And I always say, I wish school was more about process than product. I think life is more about process than product, because at the end of our life, what do we look back on? Experience, right? Not a product, not like I was just this and that was it. It was like, how did I grow along the way, until my dying day? So I think looking at education in that way of process and then project put it out in the real world. What can you create? How can you bring it to other communities? And there's ways to assess that. You can still have a grade-based system, because I know one thing that's challenging, and I'm in a school that's a college preparatory school. So you need to have a GPA, right? You need to have grades. You need to have credits to meet a requirement to get into this university. You can still have that and still give students choice about what classes they want to take and then what kind of projects they want to do, and then assign a letter grade, but with like meaningful feedback on a rubric with it. You can have that kind of hybrid system. I definitely would do away with tests. Like, I don't even really give tests out in my class anymore. The only class I do some testing is because it's an AP advanced placement and they have to take this test at the end of the year. I could do a whole other interview episode on just AP in general.
Yeah.
Most AP teachers at my school could say, throw it out the window, we're done with it, because it's a business and it's all about teaching to a test, getting the score on a test. They make a ton of money at the college board. Half the time those credits don't even get accepted at your college. So it's a big rat race. But ultimately, when I give a test in those classes, I tell them this is about learning. So I'm going to give it to you so you have practice, and you have practice like answering these questions. But if you get questions wrong, you're going to be able to do test corrections. You can work through them. And I want you to go back and see, like, how you looked at that question wrong, and like, how would you answer it? And you'll get credit back. Because for me, I don't really care that like you're getting A's on tests. Like, that's not something where, and I think most teachers would say, like, that's not how we look at our students. Like, oh, you get A's on all these tests. We want to see you grow as a person. And we want to see you be creative and be inspired and be a problem solver and be able to make these relationships with other students, and bond over the projects that you're working on. So I love that. I think there should be a lot more PBL in schools across the board. And I think we need to do away with, you have to have 4 years of math and 4 years of this science and 4 years of history and 4 years of blah, 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 and have the foundation, and then say, are you someone who's more geared towards the humanities or the sciences or the arts or whatever that may be? And, concentrate on those classes that you really enjoy. And students would care a lot more about school.
That is really true, because again, it's like, for me, I remember, like, I come from like not even like a grade system. I come from like a number system. So I knew that, okay, so this is the percentage I got, or this, I got like XYZ out of like XYZ. So like, I know what I got. But when I came to the TSC, I'm like, first of all, oh, you guys have like grades, and that's only for like the accredited version. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I see that it's more focused on feedback than it is on grades. So like, no one like really cares about grades. Like, everyone's like, okay, so how are you a better student, or not a better student, sorry, a better learner than you were before? Because I've seen from my freshman year, I think I've improved a lot as a learner. I've become a better learner because I'm understanding faster, and I am, managing my tasks better. And in general, I see improvement in myself, and I think that matters a lot to me. And also, I think one of the best things about caring about the whole process is because, okay, so if once you get, let's say, a B minus, and the next time you get an A, you're like, wow, one side of you could have just been like, wow, that's just great, and you go out and you party and like, wow, it's awesome. Or, I think what's better is to see, okay, so how did I get from a B minus to an A? Because at TSC, I know if I get a B minus, the first thing I'm going to do is hop on a call with Michael, our, weekly chat. And I'm like, I got a B minus and I need to make it into a better grade. Yeah. And so we would, discuss a strategy forward. And then when I do get that grade, even then we're going to look and we're going to be like, what did I do differently? And I think just a meaningful feedback is going to help me understand. So this is what I did differently. Because you need to know. And I'm like, okay, so if this is what I did differently, maybe I could improve more and get it to an A plus. And if I even don't get to that A plus and I stay at that A, I think I should be happy if I am constantly improving as a learner. So yeah, I think it's really important, and we do need to start going PBL. And you mentioned APs. I have actually spent a lot of my winter break researching APs and extra, just sort of things that I could get for credit, the sort of courses, high school courses that I can take. I have been considering environmental science and then further AP environmental science and stuff. Maybe also world history, because I think AP world history, I mean, as I've heard, it's not easy.
No. It's
Yeah,
good. It's a good course though.
yeah, but it all comes down on, like, the sort of credits that are accepted. So I would definitely want to have a talk on that with you later, since I've been researching on it and I do need a subject to add on anyway. So yeah, but thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it was great.
Yes, thank you so much. These are wonderful ideas. I am very much inspired by you as this young adult who took your education into your own hands, and you have met so many wonderful people throughout the world. I think you have great ideas for education, and thank you for sharing about the Socratic experience. If anybody wants to look up that school, you can look it up on LinkedIn or online. And also, you want to share any information about where our listeners can find you, your website or LinkedIn or anything else? And I'll put that in the show notes too, so people can find you.
Yeah. So I don't have a website yet, unfortunately, but I am findable everywhere on social media. I'm Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you want to reach out to me for like a collaboration, maybe a chat, anything that you have in mind, the best places to do is LinkedIn, because that's where I will respond the fastest. So it's Raheen Fatima, RAHEEN everywhere. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been such a joy, and this is really a big part of my season 2. I call this the theme of the season is the ripple effect. So now bringing on, I have some former students who are now teachers and now really connecting with students and Gen Z. I love it. This has just been such a wonderful conversation. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.